Hello, I'm Fabiola Minerali, and the project I'm presenting is Ambient Sound Documentation. Initially, this project was to take place in Venice. However, due to the pandemic, traveling to Italy was not possible, which is why UNCG campus was used as a pilot study instead. To begin, we will first look at three well-known sources which document changes in the environment. The first picture shows the 5 volumes by architect and historian Robert Stern, documenting transformations in New York City. The second shows pages from Palladio's monumental work, The Four Books of Architecture, and the pictures at the bottom show a well-recognized project in Venice Biennale, documenting transformations in the UAE over the past century. What can be noticed from this work is that although visual characteristics are prominently discussed and analyzed, the historic acoustic environment is not documented with the same detail. In an article, Kong explains that cultural natural heritage cannot be properly appreciated using a monosensorial analysis, in other words, simply based on vision. Sound does not last long after its production, and it's easily forgotten even though it's a primary sense. It's important to document it because, as Mariana Guzzi described, the sounds of the past can provide us with indication of the evolution of a community. To provide an example, we will look at some pictures of UNCG campus through the years. These are some of the pictures of significant locations on campus spanning a period from 1920 to 1961. And this is what campus looks like today. And we all know what the prominent sounds are, but without proper documentation, we will lose this acoustic history, which is impossible to recreate in the future. For further comparison, here are 2 aerial views of campus, the left from 1975 and the right is current. All the buildings highlighted in blue are some of the most significant ones, which have been present for years, such as Curry, Faust, McKeever, Stone Building, and we can see from comparing these 2 views that campus has undergone great changes through years. This leads us to the goal of the project, which is to explore holistic methods for documenting and archiving environmental acoustic characteristics. Our proposed method is a multi-step process which starts with the identification of sound marks or sounds of significance and using them to identify walks on campus, collecting the data while wearing specific equipment, and then presenting the data in a format that combines visuals with audio documentation. The equipment used for this pilot study consisted of moktak, a Korean Buddhist percussion instrument, the binaural recorder, which uses 2 microphones placed outside the ear canal, the sound level meter to measure specific acoustic events, and the GoPro to provide visual documentation. Here are some pictures of the process, and you can see pictures from the trial test, testing and wearing the equipment, collecting the data, and post-production process editing the recordings. For this pilot study, we documented 4 pathways on campus. The first one here starts at UNCG Soccer Stadium and ends at the CAF. The second starts at Sullivan and ends at Gatewood. And the third starts at Kaplan Commons and ends at the Bell Tower. The paths were chosen based on unique sound marks we would capture during the walk, such as the sound of bells, EUC activities, traffic sounds, students walking, and the weight indicator at traffic light. The 4th path, which I'll talk about in more detail, started at College Avenue and ended at Music Building. Some of the sound marks we were able to capture were the automatic door openers, birds and cicadas, musical instruments, and traffic. Next, you will see a clip recording from this specific walk. The sounds you heard from the clip were also recorded and analyzed with the sound level meter, which visually translated it in these graphs. In the first graph, it shows time in the x-axis and decibels in the y-axis. In the bottom picture, the spectrogram shows time in the x-axis again and hertz or frequency in the y-axis. From these graphs, we were able to measure the frequency and decibels of this specific event, which you heard in the clip. You can see the repeated light green dots in the spectrogram, which were the birds, and the red shapes circled under it are the sounds of the trombone from the Music Building. To conclude, I'd like to mention some of the difficulties in the process and how we managed to overcome them. During the trial test, we noticed that the camera was very unstable and the sound would clip if I stood next to the traffic light, so we had to take this into consideration in the future recordings. Something we had to work on was also the loud footsteps and clothes rubbing, which the recorder would pick up, and we had to improvise, as you can see in the picture below, to muffle the sounds. Moving forward, the next steps would be collecting the data at a larger scale, including recordings at different times of the year, and then incorporating 3D virtual models along with the audio recordings to showcase in a web-based format.